All right.
Okay, you go.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's afternoon here where I am. I'm not sure if it's morning or afternoon where you are, but good morning, good afternoon. I'm glad that you joined us today. So anything to do with faith at home right now is a super hot topic. There's all kinds of books coming out, lots and lots of resources being developed, and websites and blogs and all the rest. So this is a very hot topic right now. It's interesting because Jerome doesn't tend to go with the hot topic, right? But this time he seemed to hit it just right with this book, Stories of God at Home. So what's special about this resource? What makes it different from all the other stuff that's out there? Well, first of all, I think it is less about sort of doing God stuff at home with kids, telling Bible stories and making crafts and all the kinds of things that you see people doing sometimes at home, which are all good, wonderful ways to spend time with your kids. But the focus of this resource is more about weaving your family story with the stories of God. And so all of the Godly Place scripts have been adapted in that way to really pull out some family storytelling while at the same time telling these stories of God that are so important. So why is faith at home so important? There's all kinds of reasons out there. I could never list them all, but we all know that church attendance is more sporadic these days. We're not seeing people as often. We know that children spend far more time with their parents than with a Sunday school teacher or a priest or whoever might be the formation person at their church. So because of that, we want to give parents some resources. They're not always equipped to, or maybe they just don't have the courage sometimes to go into this area. Maybe they weren't brought up in the church. They just don't have the resources. So we want to give them some resources, obviously. And there's a real hunger, I think, on the part of parents to spend quality time with their kids in this way, especially as they get up into elementary school and beyond, when they're so busy running from one activity to the next. So when they are together, they want to do something meaningful. They don't want to just plop in front of the TV and watch a movie. They want to do something together that's meaningful, whether it's going on a hike outdoors or hopefully spending some time with some of these stories. So let me stop there and see if anybody has anything they want to say about that, anything they've noticed in their own setting that makes this a particularly timely topic. I don't want to just ramble on if you've got some things to add. All right, well then, let's dive in a little bit to some of the reasons for this. Oh, here's a couple more people not able to get on. I don't know why these are all coming to me, Teresa.
I don't know.
Well, I'll have to forward them to you afterwards because I don't want to take the time to do that now. Maybe we can send them a link to the recording just so they get a chance to see it. I feel badly not responding, but it will take too much time for me to do that now. So let's talk a little bit about family stories and the importance of sitting around and telling your stories. I don't know about you, but I come from a storytelling family, but we kind of have our repertoire, the stories that we tell over and over again. My poor husband who sits there through them all will roll his eyes. Here they go again. And we all have to say to him, have you heard this one? And he's like, oh, I've heard this one. So we love to tell those stories. And so what is important about doing that work with children? Well, there have been lots of studies about this, psychological studies, that show that the more children know about their family's history, the stronger their sense of control is over their lives, the higher their self-esteem, and the more successfully they believe their families function. So in one study, children were asked questions including,
I found on the web for history control.
Including, now Siri's talking to me, including, do you know where your grandparents grew up? Do you know where your mom and dad went to school? Do you know where your parents met? Do you know about an illness or something really terrible that happened in your family and what your family did around that terrible event? Do you know the story of your birth? And there were about 20 of these do you know questions. And what they found in this study was that knowing the answer to those questions was the best single predictor of a child's emotional health and happiness in the future. So I'm not sure about the study. I haven't read the study. I don't know what measurements they use to measure happiness and success. But certainly it rings true for me and my own experience with working with children all these years. And of course, Dr. Berryman talks powerfully about that in the book. If you don't have a copy of the book yet, I'm sure most of you do if you're getting ready to lead a workshop on it. He speaks very powerfully about it in the opening chapter, but also in the last chapter where he talks about his own experience with the birth of his daughter who was born with spina bifida. But one of the things he points to is his work in the Houston Child Guidance Center with children who presented with suicidal ideation. And one of the things that they discovered as a team was that those children really didn't know their stories, that they didn't come from a family that told those kinds of stories for whatever reason. And I'm not trying to say that all suicides are a result of that, so don't get me wrong, but this is what they discovered in that particular setting at that particular time. And so the treatment that they designed was to get families together and to give them some tools to begin telling those stories. And they found it to be a powerful, powerful experience for those families and for those children. And it was that experience that led him to get out of that work and to go back into the parish and to really begin to develop Godly Play. All right. So the stories children read in books, of course, help them to become a part of other people's worlds, but the stories that they hear from their family help them to understand their own world, who they are, where they come from, where they might want to go, what's important in their family. And they really shape them. So we want to find more and more ways to sit and share those important stories together. So that's the basic impetus for doing this work at home. And so let's just do a quick overview of the book. The stories from the Godly Playroom that Jerome has adapted are Creation, Christmas, which we're going to talk in detail about today, the Easter or Preparing for Easter stories, the Faces of Christ for those of you who are experienced Godly Players, Pentecost or Knowing Jesus in a New Way, the Good Shepherd, and the Circle of the Church Year. But there's also a wonderful chapter in the book about children's literature that Jerome recommends, and some ideas about how to read that and have the same kind of meaningful conversations around those stories that you might with the stories of God. So I'll stop there. I'm looking to see, I'm not watching to see if there are comments or questions.
There are a few. Let's see. Kay said, many of our children are from split families and are not able to attend Sunday school every week.
Right.
This is a valuable resource for parents and the grandparents to bring them.
Yes, and I would echo that too, Kay. And I know a lot of grandparents in my own parish whose adult children don't take their kids to church very often, maybe even only when they come to visit the grandparents, right? So they're very excited about this resource, and several of them have signed up for my workshop that's coming up later this month because they want to be able to share the Advent story at Christmas time when everybody's gathered in the house. And so I think you're right. I think that this is a wonderful resource for folks who just can't get here very often or for whatever reason aren't making that a priority in their lives.
I think this is from Sally. It's a little cut off. She said really solid neurobiological studies that support repeating family stories for moral development.
Right. Yeah. Maybe at some point, I'll talk with Sally too. Maybe we could put some of those articles up on the website. People might be interested in that. So I have a page on the Stories of God website called Additional Resources. And so I'll put some links to some of these studies, and maybe Sally can help me with that. She's working on a DMin right now in this area. So that would be a great resource. And particularly the study I just quoted about the 20 questions. I'll put a link up to it.
And I went ahead and resent the email that had the link with the correct link to the database. So hopefully, if people are trying to get on, they'll see that.
Great. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you. So one of the important distinctions that Jerome makes in the early chapters is the difference between storytelling and what he calls relational storying with your family. Actually, he borrows that term from Kevin Bratt, who wrote a book called Story as a Way of Knowing. And in that book, Bratt talks extensively about narrative meaning and how that when we tell stories or when we are sharing stories with others, that the meaning of the story is a kind of co-creation of both the teller and the hearer. So that's an important distinction to think about, especially as you introduce this to the participants that come to your workshop, to think a little bit about how is that different than being just a storyteller, but to do relational storying, and for them to maybe do some reflecting on that in small groups, or if it's a small enough group, you can do it with the whole group. So make sure you pick up on that. If you look at the guide that I developed, it's on the website, and I'm going to go to the website in a minute and just give you a little tour in case you haven't seen it. But there's a little side box about storying, and some information about that. But you can read about it both in chapter 1 and in chapter 2 of the book too, for if you want a little more background to give people about what that term means. And one of the discussion questions is about that. So you want to spend just a little bit of time on that for sure in your workshop. All right, so let's talk about the workshop. I'm not sure if you could quick type in, those of you that are on, are you going to lead a Sunday morning workshop, or is it a Saturday morning that has a little bit more time built into it? I'm just curious kind of where people are. Or maybe you haven't scheduled one yet, and that's fine too. Maybe you're just exploring this as a possibility. But it would be great to hear what you have planned. Saturday, 2 hours, says Charissa. Sunday afternoon, 1 to 2 hours, Angela. Some people are still exploring. First Sunday of Advent, maybe in the afternoon or early evening, nice. Okay. My workshop that I have planned here in Belmont, maybe a workshop with my Wednesday morning women's group. Nice, Kay. That sounds like fun.
Mm-hmm. Mom's group that meets on Mondays.
Mm-hmm. Great. All kinds of possibilities for sure. Maybe a potluck, Advent potluck, someone said. Oh, that's Kim Messenger, my good friend here in Belmont. Okay. Well, here in Belmont, I'm doing a Saturday morning workshop on November 17th. And it's not an intergenerational event. It's just for parents or grandparents or anybody else who's interested, an adult who's interested in learning how to do this. So that would be different too. If you did an intergenerational event, it would look a little bit different, I think. So here's what I'm recommending, that you do a little intro to the whole book, Stories of God at Home, and you can do that like I just did for you, or you can show the intro on the website. And if you're interested in seeing that, I'm going to take you to the website now. We're not going to watch it, but I just want you to see where to find that on the website. Okay. So here's the website. Can everybody see that, Teresa? I can just see you, but are people seeing?
I can see it.
Okay.
Everyone can see it.
Okay. So here's our website, Stories of God at Home. And there's the second tab, says Introduction. And that's where you'll find a link to the introductory video. And I'm just going to click on it because I want to make sure I tell you. It's about a little over 13 minutes long. So it's not short, but it's got a lot of good information in it, and I think it's worth watching, especially if you're not sure you're comfortable introducing the book yourself. All right, so there's that resource there. It features Jerome Berryman and a few other people as well. But anyway, there's the introduction. So that might take about 13 minutes, a little more than 13 minutes. And then I recommend that you demonstrate the story that you're introducing. And you can do that yourself. A lot of you are really experienced Godly Play storytellers, but you're going to have to take a look at how the script's been adapted. When we taped the demos for these stories, one of the things the storytellers I recruited fussed at me about was, oh, it's just a little bit different from the story in the room, enough so that I'm feeling uneasy, and they had to really work and practice to feel comfortable with it. But they did a great job. So the first two are up on the website, the first demos, but the one for Christmas, if you click on the Christmas tab, is here. Here's the demonstration video. And it's fairly long. It's about 15 and a half minutes long, and that's because it goes through the whole lesson. So you need to weigh if you have enough time to do that or not. But you could also demonstrate it yourself, and I don't think it would take quite as long because you wouldn't have all the transitional stuff that we did in between. But it's a good way for you to learn how to tell the story as well. It's there as a resource. All right. All right, let me go back. And this is where you're going to find the guide too. If you scroll down here to the guide for leaders of churches and schools, you can just print this out. And the first page is really for you. And the second page is more for the participants, something to hand out, maybe to send home with them, because it lists where they can go to watch these things at home if they're looking for help learning the story. All right, now let's see if I can get out of this. Stop share. I'm learning. There you go. Okay. Oh. So after you've demonstrated the story and talked a little bit about this idea of relational storying as opposed to being a storyteller, you can get into small groups and have them have a discussion of sorts around what they've observed and watched on the demonstration videos and the introductory video. And I did some suggested questions. I'm sure all of you can come up with your own, but there are some suggested ones on the guide. And so I just wanted to mention a few of them. One asked, does your family have any favorite Christmas stories? And what are your favorites? Who tells that story over and over again? And who are the listeners? How does your family make meaning with this storying? In my family, just as an example, we have collected Christmas ornaments from all the places that we go on vacation. It's been our kind of thing to do. And so as we decorate the tree, we always decorate it just right before Christmas because we're trying to keep Advent. We're kind of Advent police people in my house. So anyway, but we decorate the tree right before Christmas. And then we go ahead and pull out those ornaments. And of course, all the stories come flowing out of, remember when we went, to see, the Tower of London or whatever the Christmas ornament might be from, or when we visited this place, or we spent summer vacation here, and all of those stories come out. Or when we went to see the Rockettes at Rockefeller Center, we have a Rockette Christmas ornament. And then, of course, all the stories about the adventures we had in New York. It was a snowy New York, and we were trooping around, and I had a broken foot, and so I was wearing this cast, and it was snowing, and everyone tells the story. And then my daughter caught a horrible cold, but still we had this grand Christmas experience in New York. But we all tell that story over and over again. So what are some of the stories that your family tells, and what are some of the traditions that you keep at Christmas? On Christmas Eve, we always have a Swedish smorgasbord because my mother her family comes from Sweden. And so we tell that story and where the food, all the different foods and all the different ways that we've shared that with friends and family and all the rest. And then, of course, all of the decorations are just infused with meaning for all of us, aren't they, as we open up the boxes and pull them out. And so I'm just draw people to begin to thinking about all of that and how their family makes meaning around those things and those traditions. And then towards the end on my little box of questions, I'm going to invite the participants to practice with the wondering questions that are in these adapted stories. So at the end of the first Sunday in Advent, there's only one wondering question, and it's, I wonder if you've ever met a prophet. And so I want people to begin thinking about that, especially those who are going to be leading it. Because that's kind of an odd question, isn't it? I wonder if you've ever met a prophet. What is a prophet? So you might get them thinking about that. I wonder if you've ever been on a long journey is the question we ask after the second card, which is all about the Holy Family's travel to Bethlehem. So I wonder if you've ever been on a long journey. And who showed you the way? Was it a physical journey or was it an emotional journey? And then how will you use the story at home? What is making a plan for how you might use it, and where will you keep it? Jerome does recommend that we tell these stories around the table, at the supper table. But I think you could do it in front of the Christmas tree as well, this story in particular. But he's hearkening back to the idea that the table is a sacred place in our homes where we gather for food and to share the stories of our day, especially in the evening. And it is kind of an altar in our home, if you will. So it's a holy place. So to gather there, it might be where you keep your Advent wreath, if you have one. So it's a natural place to sit and lay the story out and tell it maybe after dinner or at some other point in the evening. Any questions about that? About leading that discussion? Just looking over here at my sidebar. I don't see any. Okay.
Yes. I love your personal family examples that you're giving, Cheryl.
Thank you. Thank you. So
it's
then,
making me think back to my time with my grandparents and things before they passed away. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I wish I could hear everyone's story on here. Yeah, that's unfortunate that we are on chat. But if you want to share a quick one, we can all see. Can everybody see the chat, Teresa? Like maybe a really fun story, or just you and me?
Yeah, everyone should be able to see it. There are options for how people can respond if they want to just respond to us or to everyone. So if they have that so that they're responding to everyone, then they can all see it. There is a question from Angela. If we have kids at the event, would you recommend having them participate in this or separating them?
I think for this part, I would have the kids doing something else because you're really, trying to equip the parents to go home and do this storying with their kids at home. And so it's not really appropriate for the kids to be there. So you might have another activity for kids to be doing during this time. Maybe they could be packing lunches for the homeless or doing something with some other folks in the parish. And then I would bring them to help with the putting the story together, the DIY kits. I think they would enjoy being a part of that.
Yeah, Cindy suggested that at this point, maybe they could be, if it's early in Advent, like the first Sunday, they could be making their Advent wreath. And Angela's asking when they'll see the story. Should they see the story at all? So I think you're going to talk about that in this next part, right?
Yeah. I'm thinking that you would save the storytelling to happen at home so that the children wouldn't see it here. They're familiar with this lesson if they're in a Godly Play church, so they know it really well. But it's going to be a little bit different at home. You know, mom or dad's going to be sharing it, or grandma or grandpa, and then, as I said, it's much shorter, and the wondering questions are really meant to draw out the family to talk and tell stories. And that was the next thing I was going to say, is that you're going to need to do a little bit of talking about that, especially if the people are used to classic Godly Play, where the storyteller doesn't wonder out loud. And so in this particular context, we think it is important for the storyteller to share. And so, for instance, with the question, I wonder if you've ever met a prophet, you might think about a family member who was a real leader for you, someone who showed you the way, or someone else known to the family that you could talk about, those sorts of things. And that might prompt other kinds of remembering from the people at the table, other adults who are sitting there. But we think it's a different context than the room, and we want you to share your stories. You know, I wonder if you've ever been a long journey, you know, maybe talk about a family road trip that you went on and how you got lost and how did you get through, or maybe the journey that you took towards becoming a teacher or whatever it is that you do in your lives. You know, my children love to hear the story about my call to ministry and what, you know, how did I decide to become a priest? And so I often tell that story over and over again to them. They just like to hear it. And that was certainly a different kind of journey for me. And there were lots of people that, you know, kind of helped me along the way. So it's okay, is what I'm saying. You have permission to wonder and share during this time around the table with these stories.
I don't know if you could see the question from Jessica. Do you let the kids work through the week? And do you recommend that they tell it?
I think so. I would leave it out. One of the big decisions to make is where to keep this story. If you only own this story of the stories of God at home, you might keep it with your Christmas or Advent box of stuff that you bring upstairs out of the basement and unpack together as a family, and then put it somewhere where children can have access to it during the week and work with it. That would be fine. And if you own a creche set that has child-friendly figures in it, that could be nearby, so they could bring those figures to the story as they see fit, that sort of thing. But definitely have it accessible to the kids throughout the season of Advent. What set? Angela's asking. Do you mean what kind of Holy Family or creche set? I just meant if you have we have a creche from Haiti that's made of wood, and my children always played with it. You might have something that's a family heirloom that they really can't play with. So then you'd have to keep it up high, and it couldn't really be used in that way. You might even recommend this to your parents who come to your workshop, that they look for something that is child-friendly, that they could put down on a coffee table or a low table that children could interact with throughout the season of Advent safely. And there are lots of resources on the web out there. If you just type, Holy Land creche sets, up pops all these olive wood sets that you can buy. I just sent one to my daughter in England. She just got married and has her own apartment and home for the first time with her new husband. And so I sent her one to put out during Advent. And I just Googled on Amazon for something, and I found this beautiful olive wood creche set that Amazon UK delivered to her little flat in West Kensington.
We actually have the Holy Family story out all year in our living room on our TV stand. It's there all the time, and we change the colors with the church calendar, and it's always there as a reminder.
And I had one like that too, Teresa, when my kids were little. My kids are all grown up now, but when they were little and we had like a playroom, I had one set up in our playroom all the time too, and would change the color as well. That's a great idea, and they loved that. Messenger says that their potluck, they have a DIY creche set with simple wooden pegs that people and, parents and kids can decorate together. That's a lovely idea, so that they go home with not just the Advent story, but with a set that they can connect with. It's great.
Cool.
Somebody's asking about a daily devotion for Advent. And I think that's, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a great idea, but it might, for me anyway, I remember when I had young kids, it might have been just a little too much every day, since there was so much going on during the season. But I know there's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, I know one year did the Jessie Tree. She has that up. We just set it up in our house somewhere and we did it. And there's lots of stuff for doing Advent at home with kids that you could use in addition to telling this story once a week.
Mm-hmm. Would you recommend to parents to have work time after the story?
Oh, I missed that one. Yeah, I saw that earlier. In this particular book, there is no direction about work time, and so I don't think you necessarily have to do that in your workshop, but you could talk a little bit about work time, especially those of you that are in Godly Play parishes that really understand more and more parents are beginning to understand what that's all about. And, in his book, Stories of God at Home, he recommends that you have a story bag that you just keep with you in your car, or an art response bag that you keep with you in your car that has some simple art supplies, so that wherever you are, in a doctor's waiting room or watching the swim meet, you can pull that out and your child can do some art, open-ended art. So definitely having that kind of thing available in the house, I think, is something you could talk about with parents. I remember after I learned about Godly Play, I was a young mom when I first learned about it, and I set up this cabinet in our house with all these open-ended art supplies that the kids could just go to and get stuff out and use. And I think that was a very useful thing for them as children, to have that available to them all the time. Someone's put up here, I don't know if you all can see the Anne Voskamp's Jessie Tree book with ornaments as a resource, so you might check that out. Yeah. Great. Okay, for daily things, Kim Messenger was suggesting that they used to light the Advent candles during the evening meal and share just their highs and lows at dinner. Yeah, we always did that too. We always lit the Advent candle. Sometimes we sang a verse from O Come, O Come, Emmanuel together, or the collect for the week. So our children would get familiar with that language. So from the prayer book, the Book of Common Prayer, if you're Episcopal, that has a different collect each week that goes with the candles. So we would do that as well. Certainly the Advent wreath is a great thing to gather around each week. And we, at my church, in addition to doing this workshop, on the first Sunday in Advent, we always have a big Advent wreath making party. And so we'll continue to do that because people love to do that and their kids, and that's very intergenerational. The kids are working with their parents and they make beautiful things. It's not hard. And they go home with this lovely thing to have at their house all season long. So in addition to doing some discussion together in small groups or with the whole group, I recommend that you spend a little bit of time talking about the art of wondering. And on the back of the guide, like I told you, there's a little handout that you can give to parents about wondering and how it's a little bit different than any other kind of Q&A that you might do after a story, and that the most important thing I would underline is that if you know the answer to a wondering question, it's not a wondering question. So these are open-ended questions that you don't necessarily know the answer to, that you're not pulling for a particular learning. And that's new for parents or for any of us. It's new for all of us, right? to have that kind of interaction. So to lift that up for people, I think is important. This is a great opportunity to do that, and a way to support your Godly Play program. One of the things that I'm always doing here at All Saints is where I work, I have in the service leaflet, I have a little thing called Today in Godly Play, and I do a little summary of whatever the story is, and then I put the wondering questions. And what I'm hoping is to stop people's tendency to get in the car and say, what did you learn in Godly Play today? And instead, maybe they'll ask, I wonder what part of the story you liked best today. Just to continue that kind of open-ended wondering that we do in Godly Play at home, in the car, wherever they are. So this is a chance to really do some teaching and thinking about that with families. So take that opportunity and spend a little bit of time on that. And then also spending some time talking about why you would spend the energy to learn the story by heart. When you could just pick up the book and read the script from the book, why would you learn it? And so I have a little bit of a block on this guide as well about the importance of learning the story, and some hints about how you might learn the story, and remind them again that there's the demonstration video on the website. They can watch that. And in fact, these scripts have been greatly shortened. I mean, they're much shorter. I don't know if you've had a chance to look any at them, but for the first Sunday, you just talk very briefly about prophets, and then say, now I wonder if there is anyone in this family who has ever known a prophet. It's just very short, and not like learning the stories for a Godly Play sort of classic class or session. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about what you need. Let's see. Okay, there's some more resources being listed here. Be sure to check those out in the chat room, folks, because there's a lot of wisdom in this room. I see the names over here, and I know a lot of you, and so make sure you check out those. Can Cheryl's Today and Godly Play Sunday Bulletin write-ups be made available through members' resources or other? I'll look into that for sure. This is another opportunity for me to remind everyone that you can now buy the parent pages digitally. And so they're much more affordable. You just buy one set, and you can print out as many as you want for the rest of your life for whatever story you're telling. And it's a great thing to take advantage of. And those all by themselves they're better than my little bulletin blurbs. So I'm just not always sure that those parent pages are going to get to the parent, because I give them to the child to give to the parent, and they don't always get to the parent. Or even if they're going to make it into the car after coffee hour, because I find them scattered about the church. So I'm looking for multiple ways to get people. Are the parent pages available in Spanish? Not yet, but it's on our list to make available. And we're also, we are currently in the process of revising Volume 6, and in that process, we're going to develop parent pages for all the Volume 6 lessons as well. Our goal is to have a parent page for every story in Godly Play. And for example, in the revision of 2, 3, and 4, there were several that didn't have accompanying parent pages, but we developed them in the revision.
I'm looking for the link on the church publishing site for the parent pages, and I'll put it in the chat box so people can have it.
Oh, thanks, Teresa. Are you using those in your program, Teresa, the parent pages? Have you guys started using them?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
We have a very new program, so.
Yeah. Even just a template. Yeah. I could put a little article about it for sure. I'll write something up, or in the Facebook page. So watch those places. Kim Messenger says she bought the parent pages this year. Yeah, they have little tidbits about Godly Play. She says they're a great resource for educating parents about Godly Play. Yeah. Good. Oh, and she puts up signs with a quick paragraph about what the story in each classroom will be that day too. So as parents drop off, they can see what the story is. That's another thing to do. Any way that you can connect the parents to what's happening in the room, but also educate them on how to talk about these things in an open-ended way is going to be helpful for the child. So I want to talk just a little bit about what you need for the DIY kits, because I'm assuming that most of you are going to buy a DIY kit or a bunch of DIY kits from Godly Play Resources. And so when you get the kit, you'll have a sheet like this that comes, and these are the items that will be included in the kit. You'll get the wooden star to put on the box. You'll get the popsicle sticks to separate the sections on the underlay, right? You'll get a color copy of the Advent cards, the plaques that we use for each Sunday. And then you'll get a box. So this is what the box looks like. It's just a cardboard box that folds. It comes flat and you have to fold it. It's okay looking. It's not gorgeous, but it will work to keep the story in. Parents might decide they have something nicer that they want to use, and that's fine. They could put the story in a basket too. It doesn't have to be in a box. But if they do give you a box and a gold star to glue on the top, the gold star is wood, so it makes it look a little bit more rich because it's raised up from the top of the box. So you get that. And so what do you need to do before the parents come? Well, I recommend spray painting the star and the popsicle sticks because you know how they're, I don't know, can you all see this over here? Here's a set that's been put together. You know how the popsicle sticks are gold and they separate each of the sections. So you want to paint those. Sorry if I'm making you nauseous, moving the camera. You want to paint those gold prior to the parents coming, because otherwise it'll take too long for somebody to spray paint them and wait for them to dry. So I would do that in advance. You can have some extra paint and sticks available, you know, because maybe you're not sure exactly how many people are coming. It doesn't really take that long for it to dry, but you just want to avoid that step if possible. And it's stinky too, it smells. So I would recommend doing that ahead of time. The underlay too, I would recommend cutting the underlays before the parents come because that's kind of a fussy task. And I did write up exactly what you need to have depending on how many people. So let's see, where is that? So 1 yard of felt, purple felt, will give you enough for 12 participants. And then you'll need white felt for the final square, and 1 yard of white felt will give you enough for 20 participants. And we recommend that you cut them out in advance. I talked to our buddies at Godly Play Resources to get hints on how best to cut out the underlay. They recommend using these kind of mats, the renewable mats, to lay those out on the table. And then if you get yourself one of these rotary cutters, you can just roll along the straight line to cut out your underlays. But as I said, it's a little bit fussy, so I would do them ahead of time if possible, or maybe get a couple people to come in and help you if you're expecting a big crowd. But then they can glue the popsicle sticks. They can glue the white piece on the last bit. So that's one piece that they can do. They can put the box together. They can put the star on the box. You want to make sure you've got white glue that dries clear. Any kind of white glue that dries clear is fine for doing all of the gluing. You're going to have a paper Bethlehem in your DIY kit. Can you all see this? It's kind of funny in here. The lighting in here is weird. But it was flat, and I cut it out with my sharp scissors, and then there's a little tab that I tuck in here, and I just put a piece of tape, and it sits flat like that. Again, it's not as beautiful as the wooden one that you get in the fancy wood set. But it looks like Bethlehem, and it will work for our purposes to tell the story at home. As I said, you get the cards like this, 2 to a page, and you're going to need to laminate those. So if your church owns a laminator, great. Otherwise, you're going to have to find somebody you can borrow one from or purchase one for this workshop. And if you can get a couple warmed up and ready to go, that will make this go faster depending on how big your crowd is. And I recommend that you cut out the cards before you laminate them. That way you get a nice seal when you do the laminating. And you might use a paper cutter like this. You've seen these old paper cutters in offices to cut them out. And I have a couple of these, so I'll put them out on the tables where we're going to be making our sets and let people do that themselves. I'm not going to do that ahead. I mean, whatever you can get them to do, obviously, is part of the fun, is making them. Let's see. And there are all kinds of laminators available, different kinds in at Staples, or Amazon sells them, and you'll need to have laminating sheets. Make sure you've got all those things. But I sent out that checklist with the MailChimp that went out. If you didn't get it, please email me and I'll send it to you. All right. Let's see. Make sure I've got everything. Yeah, I think that's everything that I can think of in terms of what you'll need. And Godly Play Resources stands ready to ship the DIY kits as we speak. They'll ship them immediately, whether you want purple or blue. They have them available on the shelves. They've been getting ready for this season, so there shouldn't be an issue if you call this week or next to get them pretty quickly.
And the more you order, the cheaper they are per kit.
Yes, same with the books. The more you order, the cheaper they are. I'm charging my parents who come to this workshop $30, and that covers my costs, the cost of the kits, the cost of the books, and the cost of the additional materials that I'm going to have to buy to go for them to complete the kits.
So that's $30 per family, so $30 per kit.
Mm-hmm. Right. The kits don't cost $30 each, but I figure with the felt that I have to buy and the gold paint and the glue and all the rest, that I needed to up it a little bit. So the kit and the book cost less than that, but.
Yeah, the kit is anywhere from $14.95 up to $17.95, depending on how many.
Right. I'm looking to see if we have other questions. What width fabric were the felt rolls that you bought by the yard? Oh, I have that here. About 36 by 72 is what I purchased at the Joann Fabrics is where I went. I don't know what kind of fabric store you have near you, but that was the 36 by 72 was the yard. That's how much a yard was.
Yeah, those dimensions are in the email as well.
Mm-hmm. Kim is charging $20 for supplies, and then she'll just have a few books available, and people can buy the book afterwards if they're interested. Autumn has candle kits on sale for $2.50 a set. There you go. If you want to give people Advent candles to go home with. All right. I'm so excited. I'm sorry, go ahead, Teresa.
I said Angela just said that her church got the wood set.
Wow.
That's exciting.
You went all in, huh, Angela? I can't wait. Angela, make sure you send us pictures, all right? We'd love to see all those wood sets lined up. That they are beautiful. And of course, you know, my guess is that if somebody falls in love with this, that they're going to probably want the wood set eventually. But it's hard for somebody who's just trying to envision doing this to make that kind of an investment right out the gate. And that's why we've developed these kits, because we don't want the cost of those wooden sets to be a barrier to somebody getting started with this at home. Can we get a copy of the chat? We'll look into that. Okay.
Yeah, there's an option down here for me to save the chat, so
okay.
I will do and see what happens. I haven't done that before.
Okay. Great.
And then
Great.
what I can do with it. I will try. And you mentioned photos. would like photos from anyone who's doing workshops, right?
Yes, I was just going to say that, Teresa. You read my mind. Yeah, we're so excited that there's so much interest in this, and we would really love for you to send us some feedback on how it went. Maybe a short email, little note about how it went, how many people came, and what the energy felt like, what people said about the workshop, about the resource. Some photos of the event would be great. And then even some check-ins with families after Christmas to find out if they were able to use it and what that was like for them. Send us all that, because this is brand new for us at Godly Play. We want to know what's going on with this at home and what the impact is. And so please be in communication with us about all of that. And we hope to, again, gear up for a similar kind of workshop as we head towards Lent, using the faces of Christ, obviously. And so this will help us, as know how to craft that, what we need to make available to people, because this is brand new for us, brand new.
I just know from the names on here that there are a lot of Episcopalians. And can you kind of just mention what you're going to do at Forma with Stories of God at Home, so that they can get excited about that?
Yeah, so I'll be doing a workshop at Forma on this as well, and we'll be focused more on the creation lesson, and people will go home with a creation DIY kit completed as part of that. But it'll be a chance to really do kind of one of these workshops in person with me. So hopefully if you're at Forma, it's one of the pre-day workshops, if you're able to come to one of the early day workshops, feel free to sign up for that. And there will be a slight cost to pay for the materials. I don't know, do you have that detail, Teresa? I don't have that in front of me right now. Okay, well,
I don't need.
You'll be hearing about it. I can't remember what we're charging, but yeah. There'll be another workshop pre-day led by Kristen Erskine and Lee Dixon on using Godly Play with older children too. So there'll be 2 workshops at Forma on Godly Play. All right. Well, again, as I said, we're excited to see more details on when and where for Forma. Well, Forma is going to be in Indianapolis this year, and I think that the early bird registration has ended, but registration is open. If you just go to their website, Forma, you'll be able to register for it. And it's the end of January. The dates, I have to look at my phone for the dates.
22nd? Or no. Oh, yeah, sorry. Wrong month. I think it's the 22nd, 21st.
Yeah, it's that week, the last full week in January. So the pre-days are like Wednesday, right? The 23rd is the pre-day, and then the conference itself starts on Thursday, I think, on the 24th.
And it's $40 for the workshop for older children, $70 for the Stories of God at Home.
Okay.
And that gets you a book. You get a book with that and the creation kit.
Right, and this time Godly Play Resources is cutting out all the underlays for me. So I'm not going to travel with those. They're going to ship those for me. So that's why it's a little more money than if I just was doing it myself here in Belmont. Mm-hmm. Oh, there's the link to the Forma event.
Jessica.
See, the wisdom in the group. This is a very wise group, I can tell. All right, well, we're just about. Go ahead, Teresa. Yeah.
Forma is put on by the Episcopal Formation group, but I don't think you have to be Episcopalian to attend. So if you
or to be a member, right? Yeah.
Looks interesting to any of you. You can come. It's a great time to connect with other formation leaders and just learn from great people out there and do some good networking.
Yeah, it's a great workshop, especially if you're, if you're leading a Christian formation program at your church, either as a volunteer or a paid person. There's lots of great resources. for you. But we, like I said, can't wait to hear how these workshops go. I'll be waiting with bated breath for the pictures and the feedback. Thank you for joining me today and for the really amazing work that you're doing with children and families. And thank you, Teresa, for helping to host.
And please reach out to either one of us if you have questions as you're planning your workshop. We'd love to help you.
We should mention too that this webinar was open to anyone who is interested in Stories I've Got at Home. But we do offer regular webinars for members just like this on different topics. So if you're not a member, you might consider joining the foundation as a member. And Teresa is our membership coordinator, so you can get in touch with her and she'll help you through that. All right.
Yeah. We meet quarterly, sometimes more often, and have great conversations. So we'd love to have you join us again.
And I do have a Stories I've Got at Home Facebook page too. That if you like, you'll see me post things on there. I'm trying to be good about posting lots of things, but not always. But keep watch there for more resources. And thank you. Happy Advent.
All right. Thank you all.
All right, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheryl. Bye.
Thanks, Teresa. Bye-bye.